There is actually a job called the professional sleeper.
She had to smell your sneakers.
I am not going to encourage you to guess what a chicken sexer is.
Absolutely not, John. Cyrano de Bergerac.
Was worth the price of admission for me, Kurt. Thank you.
I love the concept, right? What a snake milker conjures up in your head. Yeah?
Y'all.
Yeah?
Y'all.
A mighty hello to you, young Jon Ellenthal of ye smart Drivel fame. Kurt Schneider here. How are you, John?
I'm doing well, Kurt. Thank you. How are you doing? And have you been to an old English tavern recently?
Ye Old Cheshire Cheese in London, the oldest pub in London.
And you just came from there?
No, I wish I had, because I have a nice pint of plain or pint of Guinness, as they say.
And would you have said, can I have some more?
I would, and I would have been like Oliver Twist. Speaking of Oliver Twist, John, he had quite an interesting job. He was a beggar. Made us think, what are some interesting jobs now? We did a podcast a while ago of jobs that no longer exist, like the pin setter.
Like in a bowling alley.
Exactly. Those are jobs that no longer exist. Today, we're going to talk about jobs that do exist. They're just odd and different. Gabish?
This is a companion episode, Kurt, and we got the idea for this episode from my wife, Suzanne, who sent you and I a text describing an actual job called a worm picker, where someone goes out into nature and collects worms for sale to either fishermen or universities for teaching and research, but it's an actual job to be a worm picker. We don't need much of an invitation. Clearly, there must be a lot of jobs out there that are really obscure, but are nonetheless real jobs. And as I started thinking about this, you know what I thought about, Kurt?
Tell me.
I thought about one of my favorite episodes of Smart Drivel, which is an episode called Who Is She? And I think it was episode 25, where we told the backstory behind all of these famous songs about women. We talked about, who they actually were, whether it was Roxanne or Rosalita or Layla or Eleanor Rigby. And because I've watched endless hours of the Beatles recently, and I've spent a lot of time with their lyrics, I was listening to Eleanor Rigby. One of the early lines is, picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. So that's an obscure job, picking up the rice after a wedding ceremony. And there are lots of jobs like that out there.
Let's get back to the worms for a second, and then I want to get to the rice. But first, because you just said a lot there, which is very interesting. I want to unpack all of it. Okay. First, you mentioned your wife. She also called me out on a mistake I made on a previous podcast when I talked about the Danish coming from Austria into the Netherlands. Of course, the Netherlands, those are the Dutch. The Danes and Danish are from Denmark. So I was geographically off. So thanks to Suzanne for catching that.
When you were talking about the Danish, you were talking about the breakfast food.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Lou Alcindor.
Correct. See? From whence? Not from whence it came.
And why are you mentioning Kareem? Was it his sky hook?
Yeah, it reminded me of a Danish.
Because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is a Danish name?
No, his sky hook reminded me of a Danish.
His sky hook in basketball reminded you of a breakfast pastry. Why?
Now, the Dutch are the tallest people in the world, not the Danish. Let's just get that straight.
Okay, let's not find out why.
So we're talking about these interesting jobs. And I was asking you about, did you learn anything about the worm collector? Did they get paid by the singular worm or by the pound?
They were paid by the 1,000 worms. So you needed to get 1,000 worms and you got paid for 1,000 worms.
How are you gathering them?
I assume you have a worm picker, the worm picking tool that allows you to quickly sort through soil and identify legions of worms, but you are paid per 1,000 worms collected.
I would use a Dyson vacuum cleaner. And then I'd put it on reverse through a filter big enough to let the worms come through, but not the dirt. And I'd get my...
Yeah, I'm sure that would work. I mean, you're the same person who spent 15 minutes before we pressed the record button today trying to figure out why your Apple Watch screen went blank. So that worm collecting Dyson thing operational any moment now.
So these odd jobs and what jobs people have remind me of when I was in probably 7th grade. We got paid by the company Odor Eaters. Do you remember them?
I do. They were little inserts you put into your shoes so that your shoes smelled less bad.
And if you remember growing up in the 70s when you had one pair of sneakers and you wore your tube socks in those sneakers all day long, those sneakers, they were funky smelling.
They stank.
If you had Odor Eaters, that would help. So Odor Eaters, which happened to be the corporate office of either the company or the testers, was near where I grew up. They put out a call for teenagers to go try out Odor Eaters. So we went, and this woman, in order, before you could get paid the $35 to be a tester, she had to smell your sneakers to make sure they were smelly enough that Odor Eaters would work. That was her job.
Yeah, there are actually odor testers in a bunch of industries. So if you're in the smelling good or preventing smelling bad business, like you're in the deodorant business or the perfume business, they need not only real humans like you and your friends to test the product, but then you need someone like that lady to see if the odor effect is as desired. Do you consider that to be a factory job, Kurt?
It's an Ole factory job, John.
That's right. We got some brain jokes going on here. It's an old factory job. You didn't even know that was coming, but you picked it up. You're sharp today. Must be the Apple Watch you got.
What if you were on Banaka Blast company? You remember Banaka Blast?
I do.
The breath freshener? So did you have someone having to smell people's breath, make sure it was funky enough?
So the short answer is yes. And if you were Scope or Listerine, you literally, there are real humans whose job it is to test people's breath, test people's feet, test people's armpit. And that is what is called in the trade an odor tester.
So those are the people that fail out of sommelier school. Your nose is not quite enough to see the difference and pick up the currants and the raspberries in the 82 oat Medoc. However, it's good enough to pick up the lousy BO before the Old Spice people.
That's actually a pretty similar job. And somewhere along the line, just like when you're a doctor and you do your residency, do I want to be an OBGYN like your brother? Do I want to be a surgeon? Do I want to be a podiatrist? You have to choose your specialty. So when you're going through odor testing training, you go, do you want to smell wines or do you want to smell breath for a living? And we live in a highly specialized world, Kurt.
I remember when I grew up, I spent a lot of time in Japan, as you know, 3 years. There's a profession in Japan. There's a lot of ones like that don't exist anymore, like the geisha girl. However, there is one now. The train pusher, we've all heard of this job, right? Their job, and they wear gloves, white gloves, is to make sure enough people, because it's a very crowded city with a crowded subway, get on that subway train. And we here in New York, we step in anyway. We use elbows and whatever we got. Their job is to push people and cram them in like sardines. I'd like that job. I'd get out a lot of stuff, a lot of angst.
I think they're called Oshias. And they literally, their job is to cram as many humans into a train before the door closes as possible so that they can get people moving around the city doing what they got to do.
So what's the interview process? Do they say to you, are you a pushy person?
I think they probably have you.
Pushy, not like pushy, but pushy.
No, I got it. And I didn't, I'm sorry, I didn't immediately recognize how much you were enjoying your own joke there. I should have given you a moment for that to breathe, which is why I don't smell wines for a living. I smell feet for a living.
I'll go to the olfactory and try again.
There you go. So I think one of the classic jobs that most people who've ever been on a golf course have thought of is who's the person who dives into all of these water hazards, all of these lakes, and collects all the golf balls that people like me have kindly deposited into the water, since we have little or no control over where the ball goes when we hit it. And so there is a job, not surprisingly, called the golf ball diver. And professional divers can collect 2, 3, up to 5,000 balls a day. And it's become a real industry. Since new golf balls are expensive, there's a serious industry around selling refurbished golf balls. I think it's like a $200 million industry, Kurt. And the top paid divers can make close to $100,000 a year recycling my bad shots.
Are they doing this for themselves? Are they like freelancers or are they hired by the course?
I don't know how they divvy up the territory. I imagine it's rather unstructured at this point. It's only a couple $100 million industry, but I imagine if this is your golf course, you probably get pretty territorial if that's how you make your living.
What about the guy? I always thought this was funny. On the driving range, who drove the cart that sweeps up the balls, but the balls kept hitting the cart, bang, bang.
That's why he or she is in a cage, Kurt.
Yeah, but they're hearing that all day long. They're getting hit at.
Would you rather do that or smell people's breath?
I'd rather be a bus driver, even though people get on and off out of my life all the time. They come into my life, they get out of my life.
But there's room for relationships for regular customers. So as we were doing our research for this episode, there were several jobs that came up where each one of us, I'm sure, was like, now I would be good at that job. And the number one on my list is there is actually a job called the professional sleeper. And I happen to be excellent at sleeping. I just never figured out how to do anything productive for others with my sleeping. But there are people, in fact, there's a hotel in Finland that hired someone to sleep in every bed in every room of the hotel and write a review. But it's also true of mattress companies. Someone's got to test the product. And if the product is a mattress, the only way to test it is to lie down and take a snooze. That is a job where I could excel.
What if you came out of school and you said, I'm not a mattress sleeper or I'm not an armpit sniffer. I'm a product tester. And you spend the year, 3 weeks, you're testing for smelly armpits. 3 weeks, you're testing sleeping on mattresses. 3 weeks, you're saying, are there enough anchovies on the Pizza Hut pizza? You're right, because a product tester is in huge demand and every single product needs one.
So, Kurt, what jobs did you come across where you said, I would be really good at it?
Well, I think I'd be very good at this job, though I don't think I'd really enjoy it. Professional cuddler.
You know what? I have to tell you, when I came across the professional cuddler, I think my first thought was, I think Kurt would enjoy that job.
Yeah.
But you said you wouldn't enjoy it. You'd be good at it. Of course you'd enjoy it, Kurt.
I'd enjoy it for a little bit. I have a sort of cuddle-ometer where I really enjoy it for a little bit and then it cliffs off and I don't enjoy it anymore. And then I try to extract from the cuddle. And if I'm getting paid for it, I'm probably getting paid cuddle by the hour or the time. And therefore I might have an issue with, I'd be great in the beginning and then it diminishes very quickly.
Well, I do think there are jobs, and I think they get paid from anywhere from $40 to $80 an hour to be a professional cuddler. And I could see how your relationship and your enjoyment for the cuddling could change if you were being paid for it. But then when you think that you're helping somebody who's depressed or dealing with trauma or something like that through your cuddling skill, that might restore your enjoyment of it, Kurt.
In an analogous type job, I read in the New York Post today, John.
What's
There's
that?
a woman who gets paid $2,000 a month to text with a man. That's it. So she's not a professional cuddler. She's she is in a figurative sense, right? She's a professional texter.
Is she testing about sex stuff and she's actually a sexter, or is it just basic conversation?
This guy wants to get text, and I'm sure she does a lot of OMG, that's GRT, a lot. Maybe some little emojis and some thumbs ups, and the guy's feeling good about himself.
Well, I was hoping you'd say yes, because it would have given me the perfect transition into one of my favorite obscure jobs, which is the chicken sexer.
So what?
So I actually think this came up on a previous podcast. I have no idea why, but there is a real job called a chicken sexer. Out of respect for our listeners, I am not going to encourage you to guess what a chicken sexer is. However, it is not lascivious. Is that the appropriate word? Lascivious?
Or bestiality, yeah.
It involves basically separating the baby chicks, the males from the females, because the females need to go on to lay eggs. And I'm not going to talk about what happens to the male chicks since they don't quite serve the same commercial purpose. Someone's got to separate the female chicks from the male chicks. That job is called a chicken sexer.
Are you doing it by sight, by feel, by smell? What sense are you, or do you have like a little zapper? Zip, zip.
Okay. I believe it's mostly visual, and I think you get some pretty fine motor control to the extent you can have fine motor control of your eyes so that you can quickly visually differentiate between chicken sexes.
So you're picking up and looking in one side, picking up and looking, putting the other side.
You are doing a visual inspection. For the folks who are listening to us because they can't see us, watching you hold up the imaginary chicken and look at its underparts was worth the price of admission for me, Kurt. Thank you.
Well, I'm imagining that's what they do. They pick it up and look.
It was like you were putting a face mask on, but only got a few inches away from your face as you attempted to determine the sex of the imaginary chicken you were holding.
So we have gone down an evolutionary road very quickly in jobs that are obscure or a little odd.
When you say we've gone down, do you mean we've devolved or we've evolved?
Well, you tell me after I tell you.
Okay.
Human beings, a lot of them, look for and sometimes accept help in making themselves seem better, look better, come across as better. Yeah?
Y'all.
So in the business world, people pay, and it's a job, to help you write your resume, right? They're resume writers for you, and you pay them. So you come across as better. In the world of social media, there is a LinkedIn profile writer. You pay them to write your LinkedIn profile. Yeah?
Y'all.
Yeah?
Y'all.
Sequence. Now you're single, you're dating, you join one of these dating apps. You pay someone to set up your online dating profile. These people make a lot of money.
Like a ghostwriter.
Exactly.
Well, I think that makes sense because some people are a bit more gifted with writing skills. And if you're going to employing experts to meet someone who you're going to share your life with seems like a pretty good investment to me.
Absolutely not, John. Cyrano de Bergerac, right? Did she end up falling in love with what's his face? Or did Roxanne end up falling in love with Cyrano? It's the words of the person.
Look, did you know that Cyrano de Bergerac would have been a very good odor tester?
Yes.
So you object because you think the manipulation, the lack of authenticity ultimately works at cross purposes with the process of finding someone to share time with.
Yeah. And by the way, same with resume writers. I want to hire you, not someone else who wrote your resume, or LinkedIn. I want to get intrigued by your profile because it's you, not someone writing it for you. I want the real you. I don't want someone telling me that you like jasmine and the sweet sense of lavender in the spring, when in fact you don't.
Another favorite of mine, Kurt, for those who really enjoyed learning about the job of the chicken sexer.
Yes.
I think another particularly colorful, obscure job is the snake milker. Do you know what a snake milker is, Kurt?
Well, first of all, do female snakes have teats? And do you need the chicken sexer to tell which of the snakes is a female or male?
I think you would need a snake sexer in that case, but there is no need for a snake sexer.
I'm guessing you're not getting milk out of these. My guess is you're getting poison.
You're correct. While they're not trying to extract milk, they are collecting venom from poisonous snakes for use in making, anti-venom medicines and other kind of drugs. So you need the venom to make the antidote.
I love the concept, right? What a snake milker conjures up in your head. My guess is they're taking this not just to find an antidote, but I bet you someone is selling it because there's always a nefarious person who wants to get the snake venom and they can do something with it.
Okay. Well, your imagination will have to take you home from there.
Yeah. How about, and this gets into the problem with society today, John. People don't want to put in the time. People don't want to put in the effort. I know someone who paid someone to go do jury duty for him.
How do you do that since they make you prove who you are?
Well, this was about 15, 20 years ago, and he ended up getting caught.
Oh.
And that's a big problem.
So what is the penalty for impersonating a jury duty person.
Well, that person didn't get in trouble. I don't think. I think it was the person originally called who hired.
It's like having someone take the SATs for you.
Exactly. Or like take someone sitting in your seat for the Emmys.
A seat filler, which is unlike a pot filler. However, what was the penalty for the person who tried to shirk their jury duty responsibility by sending a stand-in?
I think it was a combination of suspension and fine.
Suspended from what? From society?
Yep.
They were you're suspended.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well,
you're hanging out there. How about the people who say mediums when they mean media? Right?
Yeah. Let's say you're talking to a couple of people who act as a go-between. Are two of them called a go-between between the here and the after? Are multiple mediums or media? I think they were probably mediums.
That's when you can use it. People, when they're saying, this was on TV, in print, and in all this other mediums, that's wrong. But if you're saying Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost, her role and all of her friends, they were mediums, that's okay.
All right, I'm glad we cleared that up because I think we're exactly right about that.
Yeah, what bothers me.
Well, I can see why.
Not a pet peeve.
I can see why. And when you consider life as the sum total of things we choose to pay attention to, I can certainly see why you've invested the emotional energy in that one.
Well, it's a pet peeve. And in fact, one of our most wonderful and loyal listeners, his pet peeve is when people don't return their grocery carts to the place where you're supposed to return your grocery cart.
Yeah, you should do that. It's not a big deal. Why does everyone need to be accommodated to the nth degree all the time? Bring your damn cart back. It's ridiculous. Okay. I called you with a pet peeve one day last week because I was eagerly awaiting our next pet peeve episode. I went to the ATM machine and I don't know why they can't put the money all face up, facing in the same direction. They come out any which way but loose. And it's not a big deal. Have the money coming out facing the same direction.
Why?
Because otherwise it affects my central nervous system, okay?
Okay.
If you could fuss about people misusing multimedia, then I can fuss about the direction of the money that comes out of the ATM machine.
You know that JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Citibank all got together and they've just started a training program. And there's a job coming out of college. What you do is you turn the bills so they're the correct place.
Yeah, a money straightener. That should be a job. For as long as we have cash, which can't be that much longer, someone should take responsibility for arranging and aligning and orienting the cash money that goes in the machine so it comes out. So that's a good job. So now we're actually making up new jobs that we need, which is productive. It's our contribution. Kurt, I think we need to wrap up this episode before it turns into a full-fledged pet peeve. But before we go, what else can you share with us?
All right. So this whole episode was about weird professions.
Yes.
And if we're looking for sort of the poster child of these weird professions, I would pick a role in a movie, a guy who's short but really strong, and he's a bad guy. He wears a black tuxedo. He's got
the Penguin from Batman?
Close. He's got a bowler hat that he throws, and he throws it with such force it can slice the heads off of statues. I'm talking of Odd Job, the character from the Bond movies. These are weird professions. Odd Job. Get it, John? I
do get it. But the interesting thing about this episode for me is that the jobs we talked about are all real jobs. We don't even need to dip into fiction to come up with crazy ass jobs because the world provides us so many.
I read about this one. There's an underwater hotel in Florida. When you're underwater in your room, you can order room service and order a pizza delivered. Guess what? There's a guy who is the underwater pizza delivery scuba guy.
Wow.
That's a cool job. Yeah.
You know what he does? You know what he does in his off hours?
Golf balls.
He goes and gets golf balls. All right. All right, Kurt. Thank you to all of our listeners. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Kurt and I will be back next week with another brand new episode of Smart Drivel. Until then, we hope your week is filled with smart drivel. Goodbye, everybody.
Ciao, everyone.